I'm Charlotte, and I'm here at the International Cannabis Business Conference with Marijuana Politics, and I have with me attorney Dale Schafer, who just finished a 5-year sentence in prison after his medical marijuana operation was raided by the DEA. Welcome to the ICBC.
Thank you.
So I wanted to start by asking you to give us some framework and talk about what your business was in the glory days before you were raided by the DEA.
Well, it started with cancer in my ex-wife, breast cancer, lost both breasts. Chemotherapy was impossible to deal with without cannabis. She was a medical doctor, I'm an attorney, and when we got her stabilized, other patients came to us and asked if we could help. This was 1998, 1999. Local law enforcement showed up because I was growing her marijuana. The black market was hard to deal with. We were in a place where there wasn't clubs available, so I was growing marijuana. The sheriff shows up. We think we're following state law. It's so nebulous, we don't know. But I had represented police officers before, and they knew who I was. So they asked both of us to please look at patients. If they are approved, tell us in writing, and we'll leave them alone. Wonderful. So we started a consultation business where Molly would write a recommendation from a physician. I would see them as an attorney and try to explain to them, how do you stay out of trouble? But that wasn't good enough because the rules were so nebulous. I then got involved in our county to try and get rules and regulations. I ended up running for district attorney so that I could have questions asked of all the candidates. What are you going to do about this? It forced the sheriff and the district attorney to sit down with us as a group and work out guidelines. So we were doing medical marijuana recommendations. This is when Todd Nickery was still alive. We worked with Todd to set up our recommendations in writing. We weren't going to just tell you it's okay verbally. We give you a written document, and we would show up in court to testify for you if you got in trouble. That's what we offered for people. And we had them lined up at our door. They were coming from all over the state because there were very few people in 1999, doctors that would actually do this. So that's the business model we had.
Great. So tell us a little bit about what the raid itself was like and what charges you eventually faced.
Well, the raid was horrific. The same agents who had been at my house, looking at my plants, counting them, drinking my coffee, eating my donuts, literally making me think that they're friends, showed up in SWAT uniforms with the DEA, held my children at gunpoint, I had 34 plants, something like that. They cut them all down, took my legal files, and we had to get into a legal fight to get my files back, which I never did. And this was 2 weeks after 9/11 they showed up, and we were just in limbo at that point. We continued to do our recommendation. They started attacking Molly. They wanted her because she was doing recommendations. The federal government wanted her medical license, and she wouldn't give it to them. So we continued butting heads for 10 years as we fought them. In 2005, when the Angel Rach case was decided by the Supreme Court, 2 weeks later we were indicted and arrested. We were tried in 2007, sentenced in 2008, and we started our sentence in 2011, and we both served a 5-year prison sentence.
So I understand that now you have a whole new energy for activism, and if you wouldn't mind going through what your top 3 priorities are and how you plan on achieving those goals.
Well, I had a lot of time to look at the prison industrial complex from the inside, so reforming the criminal justice system is a high priority for me. Changing the focus of the treatment of people with substance abuse disorders from incarceration to harm reduction to alternative types of treatment, away from the mandated AA-NA 12-step system into other types of therapies. Of course, legalizing cannabis as much as we can, as soon as we can, and continue that battle. Getting hemp to be normalized back in our world again. I have 5 children, and I've told them their whole life, the petroleum era is ending. How it's going to happen, I don't know, but this is an alternative to petroleum products that can step in and make our economy better without being dependent on crude oil, whether it comes from Saudi Arabia or Canada or from here. Burning crude oil is just not a recipe for long-term survival. So those would be sort of the mix, yeah.
Great. And so now, as you step forward and back into the movement and you start counseling people, what legal restrictions do you have placed upon you?
Well, I am restricted from using cannabis in any form. I cannot violate federal law. So there's a federal statute grown out of the mafia era where an attorney can't counsel someone to violate federal law. I also can't aid or abet that. But in this situation we're in right now, we have the Cole and Ogden memos that have been put out there that have told the U.S. attorneys to stop enforcement actions if people are following their state mandates, okay? We have coming out of Congress pulling back funding for efforts to try and stop that. So on the federal front, I have to tell people and tell them very loudly, this violates federal law. Nothing I can say or do will keep you from a federal enforcement action, to understand that. But at a state level, they're developing regulations to try and help this to be a more controlled system. I intend to be on the forefront with legislators in the Capitol and at local jurisdictions to try and put meat on the bones of this MMRSA now, and if the initiative passes, then to try and help that be implemented, because those are state law endeavors. I have to be clear to people. I cannot help you violate federal law, understand that. But if you need to get permits and you need someone to help you with the process of asking for that, there's businesses to be set up. There are contracts to be written. There are insurance policies to be obtained. There are integrations of different systems here. They all require attorneys. I don't know what role I will actually play in that, but there's a great need for that right now. And I've been doing this for decades now. Been an attorney for 30 years. We've been involved in this since the late 1990s when we got actively involved to keep people out of jail. And so I continued those efforts. I do not want to see people going to jail for involvement with this plan.
And finally, as we head forward into the elections, how do you feel? Are you feeling optimistic about the future?
My personal future? Yes, I am. I was able to maintain my license through all of this because I didn't do anything that involved moral turpitude. I grew marijuana. I gave it to sick people. I wasn't out trying to make money off of this. I made money as an attorney. The federal government didn't like it. They think marijuana and heroin are the same thing, and we all know it's not. And to try to get them to separate those two it's like teaching a pig to sing. You know, it doesn't work and it irritates everybody. So at this point, let Washington try and separate some of that stuff out. I'm 61 years old and I'm coming out of prison with basically nothing. But I have a law license, and I understand, after going through the gauntlet, a lot of the landmines out there, and to try to keep people from stepping on them and assist them. I'm very optimistic about that.
And who do you feel would be the best presidential candidate to handle these problems?
Well, that's a two-part answer, because who I would personally like to see and who the establishment and pragmatically may get there are two different things. I haven't endorsed anybody because I personally can't vote, okay? So I've stayed out of that. I probably align most with Bernie Sanders, okay? Just because I like a lot of the way he thinks about reining in some of the big money. I have 5 children, and they're struggling just to make it. When I came out of high school and college, the world was wide open. Now you're lucky if you can just make enough money to support your children. Okay, that's wrong, and that needs to be undone. I was from a Republican family in the 1950s and 60s where they weren't afraid to tax people that made a lot of money. Now that's just totally off. We can't even consider that. Well, I don't particularly buy that. The establishment is very well entrenched in the Democratic Party, and pragmatically speaking, it is going to be a dog fight for Bernie Sanders to break through and to be able to get the nomination. So pragmatically, it may be more with Hillary, but I've been disappointed with the establishments dealing with the legalization of medical and or recreational. So I'm not optimistic of the establishments there. They're very slow. I think Sanders wants to do what he can do to try and turn this around as quickly as possible. So I would say much more optimistic about that.
Great. And where can people go to find out what you're doing and follow your movement?
Well, I have, first of all, I'm IT challenged. When I was in prison, you couldn't touch a computer, so I'm behind the books. My daughter is my paralegal, and she's doing the IT stuff. I have, they tell me, a Facebook page, Dale Schafer Law. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. At least that's what they tell me. So I'm telling you what I'm told. I don't want to fill in the gaps too much because I'm over my head in this stuff. But you can contact me that way. I just set my law office up in the Sacramento area in a little town called Roseville, where I'll be practicing out of. You can find me there, and I'm here to answer questions and help in any way I can.
Great. Once again, this is Attorney Dale Schafer, and thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you.